is Matt Pearce. Jesus Christ gave us the goals, but Gandhi gave us the tactics. Hi everyone, this is Matt Pearce. I've got Simon Lee, my regular co-host, and Kenneth Lee is back again. Thanks for coming, guys. And how was your Chinese New Year, you guys? This is the first show back since the break. So did you have a good one?
Not too bad. Got some rap pockets. Still.
Yeah, where's mine?
Oh, in the Chinese tradition, only those who married.
Right, okay, I see. It's like that,
should be the one who is receiving some.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and for you, Matt, I think in terms of your Chinese New Year, I think you travel from a place without much democracy, and back to Hong Kong, another place without much democracy, which was Singapore.
Yeah,
right?
I've been in Singapore actually, which is a very good comparison to Hong Kong actually. Some people would say, is Hong Kong going in the direction of Singapore actually, which is kind of a fake democracy, isn't it? Or,
that's right.
And that's the real concern actually, that Hong Kong isn't going to be going down. Thankfully, it's not going to be going down the road of mainland China. What they call democracy. It's the government are trying to push for a Singaporean style of democracy, I think.
Freedom of the press was a big concern as well.
Yeah, that is a real concern actually. I mean, it would be boring to live in Singapore. I mean, just to read the newspapers actually. If you want to read a boring newspaper, you read the Straits Times, which is the Singaporean newspaper, because it's so damn controlled by the government. But at least in Hong Kong we've got a relatively free press actually.
And our audience the audience in Singapore can tune in myradio and your show. So as a way,
that's true. If we've got any Singaporean listeners, do send us an email and say hello.
That's right. Unless at least it isn't like Beijing that you might not be able to have access to myradio.
That's true. Actually, that's true. Actually, I don't know in the mainland whether they can listen to this.
I know during Olympics times you may, because of the promise
they
to
open
the government.
Up. Yeah.
I know maybe for the Expo, perhaps we don't know. But welcome, and I think it was really great that you escaped the cold front. It was really cold when you were away.
Was it? Oh, just as well then. Yeah, just as well I was away. Anyway, it's nice to be back. It's humid in Hong Kong, isn't it? It's getting I've read in the newspapers that some of the shops are selling out of dehumidifiers. Because everyone's rushing out, and it's only February. It's still in February, isn't it? But it's still humid. But anyway, we've got a few topics we want to talk about. We want to talk a bit about the latest situation with the Defacto referendum. Also, there's been a lot of story about drugs in schools, because there's a report out this week, so we can talk a bit about that. And also some interesting news internationally about Oxfam, actually.
That's right.
The mainland Chinese government had kicked Oxfam out of China. But perhaps we ought to just have a little talk about the budget, actually, because that was just last week. And I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but just the general thing about it. Obviously, the financial secretary claimed, he was handing out sweeteners and so on. But as a foreigner, watching the budget, it seems to be the same each year, and it's this sort of thing about the government and handing out sweeteners, and the media kind of put the pressure on the government to do this, and I don't know how healthy that is. To do in terms of that sort of way of thinking. It's kind of, from my perspective, I see it as kind of a short-term thinking. And in the long term, is it the best for the community to do that? I mean, okay, people will get, I think they're talking about like a 6,000 Hong Kong dollar tax rebate everyone will get. Okay, 6,000 Hong Kong dollars. But in the long term, most people will blow that, won't they? They'll spend it on stuff. But would it be better to have the government to pour the money into trying to help people in the long term in terms of raising their salaries, or a minimum wage increase, or some sort of better job prospect, or something like that? How do you sort of see that and that whole debate? I mean, is it a Hong Kong issue?
I think the whole atmosphere in Hong Kong is that whenever it's on the eve of the budget, the media outlets would always ask the very same question. Oh, how many candies are we receiving this year? They exactly use the term candies, pai tong, right? What are the goodies? And comparing this year's goodies with last year's, and to see that the more the goodies, the better the budget. Really, really short-sighted in the sense that perhaps Hong Kong people were a bit jealous of the people in Macau, because sometimes, they talk about every Macau resident would get $5,000 or how many $1,000 every time, and that's the budget. And even those Macau ID card holder who live overseas were also entitled to get them. It really, really makes Hong Kong people very, very jealous. And that's why it turns out to be very short-sighted in the sense that, how much money would I save this year? So the media and put lots of fire on that as well. Whenever there would be goodies, it would be a good budget. And there wasn't really much discussion about, the long-term development for the city, whether there are proper programs to enhance the education of the residents or public infrastructure, which is good for the public. So the difference is that at the moment, the budget isn't about public interest, but about the public's interest. What the public are interested to get instead for the general good. It has been going on for quite some time recently. So I think you give a very interesting observation if you see it from a non-local perspective. This sort of budget was very boring.
But I mean, who should we blame, or who do you blame for that? I mean, is it the government's fault? Is it the media's fault? Or is it the people? In terms of that way of thinking. To grab the, what you can get whilst you can, get a tax rebate. But, or is it from another perspective? Because they would say, life on the street for most people is pretty damn hard. And people will be saying we should fight for what we can get from the government, whilst we can get, and so on. But I'm not quite sure how to look at it. I mean, how do you look at it, Kenneth?
I mean, whose fault is it, or whose responsibility is this outcome? I think more or less it would be about the media, isn't it? It's about how they describe or how they write about the budget, and they have been writing about the comparing with the Macau's budget policy, and based on that you can actually see people's received information based on the media, and when they do the comparison they can see, so people living in Macau is much better than those living in Hong Kong. But if you look at the number of population in Hong Kong, and when you think more about the city development and things like that, well, it's kind of different, for the situation in Macau and Hong Kong. So if the media is not focusing based on such facts and just reporting what the government is trying to do, it's kind of out of a story, or it doesn't really make sense just to make such an comparison, isn't it?
And you lived in Japan, didn't you, for a couple of years? Yeah. Did you ever get a feeling of quite how budgets were received and dealt with in Japan?
And actually, when I was living in Japan, I actually received some money from the Japanese government.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, even
were they trying to bribe you,
some
or
kind of candies or goodies from the Japanese government? Even I'm not a Japanese. I was just studying there, have a student visa for 4 years,
right.
And one day when I opened an envelope, I was like, okay, so they're asking me to pay tax? No, I'm not working. And then I'm like, no.
They're giving you money.
They're giving me money, and it's going direct into my bank account.
So in this sense, Tokyo was more generous than Hong Kong then?
Yeah, in one sense, I think the amount wasn't really big. It was just like 2,000 Hong Kong dollars or something like that. It wasn't really such a big number of amount, but at least you make people happy, and people would like, oh, okay, I'm going to have a good meal tonight, or something like that. People will spend it, but at least for people who are in need, they might be able to enjoy one good day,
sure.
or enjoy one good meal at least.
So did you get a couple of crates of Asahi beer or something with that?
I had some sake instead.
Sake, the stronger stuff. I should have known the stronger stuff.
It's the sake.
All right. So, all right. Well, we better move on. We want to talk a bit about the de facto referendum, actually, because there's been some interesting news this week about it, hasn't there?
That's right.
Perhaps, Simon, you could explain with our international listeners in mind quite what has happened with that.
Our listeners should be pretty informed about what the de facto referendum is all about. The referendum is about putting a referendum question in this by-election, saying that whether the Hong Kong people would really like to see a real election and with the functional constituency totally wiped out, so that there would be true democracy. So
but just this particular point this week about the civic party.
That's right. So the referendum question has always been there, but there has been an expectation from time to time that there would be different candidates, no matter from pro-Beijing camp or anyone who will be interested to challenge the 5 incumbents. But the interesting thing is that the Beijing's strategy was to warn or to hopefully to send a message to all interested parties that please don't